My parents always favored my adopted sister, even forcing me to combine my store opening with her graduation. This time I got my payback. I'm a 24-year-old male who grew up in what appeared to be a normal suburban middle-class family, but my parents' actions have caused me chronic suffering all of my life. Their entire reputation in our neighborhood was based on the fact that they were these wonderful people who, in all honesty, loved their adoptive daughter even more than their biological son. Few people are fully aware of the impact this had on me. My adoptive sister Emma, who was 3 at the time, was brought home by my parents when I was 6. Everything in my life changed on that day. I was ecstatic when my parents sat me down in our living room and discussed the possibility of adopting a sibling. Most afternoons I waited for my parents to get home from work by playing games in our backyard by myself. The children in the area were either much older or younger than me, and I had no siblings with whom to play. It seemed like the ideal answer to have a sister with whom I could share my toys and hang out during those long days. It was just what I had hoped for when Emma initially came. During those peaceful afternoons at home, we played together, had snacks, and I at last had someone to chat to. But over time, little shifts in my family's dynamics continued to accumulate. Emma became the center of my parents' attention, and they made all of their decisions with her best interests in mind. If Emma wasn't in the mood, they would postpone weekend family activities, modify dinner arrangements to suit her tastes and rearrange their schedules so that they could attend all of Emma's school functions while missing mine. I began to feel marginalized in my own household, as if my parents were losing interest in me. There is more to this narrative than just sibling rivalry, even though I am aware that some may assume I'm just jealous. There was a noticeable difference between Emma's and my parents' approaches to childcare. My mom quit her 8-year accounting job to become a full-time mother within a week after Emma's arrival. In contrast to when I was born, Mom returned to work as soon as her maternity leave ended, putting me in the care of different people. I spent most of my time at my grandparents' little apartment or with whatever teenage babysitter they could afford that month because my parents were constantly worried about money back then and worked extra and weekend shifts. The babysitting situation was anything from perfect. Instead of truly watching me, these sitters, who were mostly high school students looking for additional money, often saw their position as an opportunity to hang out with their partners. As they sat in the living room, texting or chatting on their phones, I would spend hours by myself in my room. Sometimes, when they thought I was sleeping, their boyfriends would sneak in through the garage or climb through our rear window. My parents would terminate the present sitter after I repeatedly told them about these instances, then hire a new one who behaved similarly. During years, this cycle persisted, and I felt that no one genuinely cared about my welfare during the majority of my early years. I believed that everything would improve when Emma arrived. I took my responsibilities as a big brother seriously, even though I was only 6. I gave her access to all of my toys and even assisted her in learning the letters, as much as a 6-year-old could. It was good to have my mom at home all the time. I believed we would finally be able to do everything I saw other children doing with their mothers, such as going to the park or baking cookies. Rather, as the big brother, my mom expected me to be mature and self-sufficient while spending all of her time and energy on Emma, treating her like a princess. When my parents changed the plans for my birthday, things really started to get tricky. Emma's true birth date was unknown to the orphanage and she had been discovered abandoned at a shopping mall. After conducting a number of tests, including dental work, developmental evaluations, and physical examinations, the doctors determined that she was around 3 years old at the time of her discovery. My parents decided that Emma should share my birthday rather than keeping the date she was given at the orphanage or picking any other day of the year. They portrayed this concept as though it were a unique privilege for me. I began to notice small differences every year, but those early combined birthday celebrations were tolerable. Even though I continued to get gifts and eat some cake, Emma started to dominate the gatherings. Family, friends, and relatives would show up with twice as many presents for her, gushing about how wonderful it was that we celebrated together and hardly seeing me. Emma's backstory appeared to captivate everyone, who treated her more like a queen than a mere child. As everyone gathered around Emma to listen to her recount the same adoption tale they had heard dozens of times before, I sat there, silently opening my gifts, trying not to feel invisible at my own birthday celebration. I still find it annoying that my parents had Emma share my birthday. She was already officially given a date by the orphanage, the day she was discovered. We could have chosen any day that may have been Emma's special day, such as my aunt's birthday in September or my grandparents' anniversary in March. However, my parents purposely picked my birth date because they thought it would help Emma feel more a part of the family. The one special day of the year when they are the focus of attention for the majority of children is their birthday. However, my parents used this innocent youthful delight as just another reminder that Emma's needs came first. They concluded this choice with sentimental platitudes about sharing and family ties, which prevented a 6-year-old from expressing dissatisfaction without feeling self-centered. The only person who appeared to realize something was off was my uncle. During that first joint party, he drew me away to ask if I truly felt comfortable with everything. By the time I was 10, I no longer celebrated birthdays but loathed them. Emma was in charge of every step of our combined celebrations, from picking princess themes that made me feel uncomfortable at my own party to selecting a cake that I didn't even enjoy. The issue with the guest list was especially unfair because I was only allowed to invite 5 of my friends, but Emma would bring 20 or more from her different activities to our home. Because of this rule, I had to pick my friends carefully every year, which occasionally strained my bonds with those who were unable to go. After I was unable to invite my best buddy to my 11th birthday, we stopped communicating for weeks. When I wanted to invite a 6th buddy one year, the inequity of these parties became even more apparent. My parents denied the request right away, claiming that our home could already host as many people as possible. Emma's pals and their mothers, who needed to supervise their daughters at all times, were able to find space nonetheless. My parents used their go-to justification that girls require extra supervision to brush off my worries when I brought up the fact that my pals arrived alone. Emma's friends and their mothers, meanwhile, occupied our entire living room and treated me like a guest at what should have been my birthday. On multiple occasions, I plucked up the nerve to propose holding separate parties. Every time I tried, my parents would cut me off with prepared answers about Emma's challenging past. They would bring up her terrible beginning in life for the 100th time, utterly disregarding the fact that they were making a difficult present for me by consistently denying my feelings, or they would tell me that she didn't know her true birthday, as if that somehow justified taking over mine. I always felt bad about bringing up the topic in these chats, as if I were being selfish for wanting a day to myself. I eventually gave up arguing over my birthday. In what had become Emma's special day, featuring her brother, I learned to put on a smile and play my part. The pain persisted. It simply became a recurring emotion on each birthday. Emma unwrapped twice as many presents than I did during these parties, and I would sit silently in the corner and try to look joyful while family members swooned over her and hardly acknowledged me. Finding my passion for making things with my hands was the one silver lining in all of this. Making a pencil holder out of an empty cereal box one dull afternoon was the beginning. Before long, I was turning a variety of everyday objects into works of art. Bins of gathered materials, such as broken jewelry, plastic bottles, and old newspapers, anything I could repurpose, filled our garage, which became my go-to spot. I watched do-it-yourself videos for hours on end, learning new ways to make everything from elaborate jewelry to gorgeous wall hangings. My works, which were solely mine and which Emma was unable to share or take over, gradually filled my room. By my early 20s, what began as a therapeutic pastime in my teens had developed into a lucrative internet business. I worked a day job at a local coffee shop and spent many hours improving product images, writing descriptions, and running my online store. Social media users began taking notice of my handcrafted goods, and soon I had loyal clients from all across the nation. With cabinets brimming with supplies, and a special shipping station in what should have been my dining room, my tiny apartment was transformed into a workshop. My funds ultimately allowed me to create my own physical store after 3 years of meticulous financial planning, working overtime, and reinvesting nearly every penny of earnings. I discovered the ideal location, a former boutique with exposed brick walls and lots of windows in a bustling shopping area. 2 months ago I signed the lease, and in my free time, I designed exhibits, planned the store layout, and planned a grand opening event. This was meant to be my chance to shine, to prove to everyone that the boy who sat in the corner on his birthdays had accomplished something meaningful. I even engaged a local photographer to capture the entire occasion. My folks reacted in a predictable way when I told them about the store opening. After 5 minutes or so of their seeming excitement, my mother revealed that Emma was graduating from college at the same time. They suggested that we combine the opening party with Emma's graduation celebration before I had even finished outlining my preparations. My dad nodded as though this was the most sensible notion ever, and my mom remarked, "Think about it, we can invite everyone once instead of making them come to 2 separate events." The irony of attempting to combine my milestone with Emma's once more went unnoticed by them. I declined right away, stating that I wanted my accomplishment to be the main focus of this celebration. When I resisted, my parents seemed surprised, as if they didn't understand why I wouldn't want to share this moment with them. Using their tried and true guilt-tripping strategies of making things easy for everyone, they persisted in pressuring me, accusing me of being selfish and challenging. They used the same expressions they had used when I was a child. "It's only one day, and why can't you be more understanding?" But this time was different. I had worked alone for years to establish this business, staying up late to fulfill orders, interacting with challenging clients, and learning every aspect of business management by making mistakes. I firmly said that this event would exclusively be about the debut of my store. They were no longer successful in making me feel bad. My parents became irate and said they might not attend the opening at all when they saw that I wasn't going to back down. I told them that was their decision for the first time in my life. I was left feeling bewildered and frustrated by the entire event. Instead of being proud and encouraging, they were attempting to minimize my achievement by making it about Emma once more. Here I was, their kid, accomplishing something important all by myself. They didn't think I deserved a celebration of my own, even though I was an adult with my own company. I was no longer a 6-year-old who could be persuaded to share his wonderful day, but the same patterns from my early years were reoccurring. Regardless of who came to celebrate, I made the decision that my store opening would be my time alone. Update 1. I got hundreds of answers after venting my unhappiness online, but one message in particular truly resonated with me. My parents had unwittingly given me the ideal opportunity for retaliation, someone pointed out. The more I considered it, the more obvious it became. A college graduation would inevitably be eclipsed by the opening of my business, especially when I could give everyone first dibs on my merchandise. Directly beneficial things always pique people's curiosity more. I agreed to my parents' proposal in a message rather than continuing to oppose the combined celebration. I informed them that I had changed my mind and that I believed they were correct to gather everyone for a single, large celebration. My parents were ecstatic at my seeming change of heart, likely believing that their guilt trips had won me over once more. I continued to be cooperative throughout all of the planning sessions, nodding in agreement as they talked about food possibilities and decoration ideas. As I had anticipated, my parents took full charge of organizing the celebration. They planned the catering, made arrangements with all of our family members and guests, and reserved a pricey location, all in keeping with Emma's graduation theme. Every choice, including the color scheme and the kind of music to be played, was created with Emma's preferences in mind. The invitation card served as the last piece of evidence that I had made the proper choice. The phrase "celebrating Emma's graduation" was printed across the top of these ornate, gold-bordered cards. Nowhere, not even in the small print at the bottom, was my store announcement mentioned. This was exactly what I had planned, but my parents undoubtedly believed I would be unhappy. Everyone in attendance would be completely taken aback by my revelation because they were all focused on Emma's accomplishment. During those weeks, I worked quietly to finish the details of my store debut and prepare my own contents. My parents had invited almost everyone, so the party location was just what you would anticipate. I couldn't have timed my announcement more perfectly. The bartender noticed me and gave me a fresh glass of champagne just after all the remarks but before the cake cutting. As I got up, everyone's eyes were on me, presumably anticipating another homage to Emma. While my parents were busy welcoming guests, I worked with the venue personnel to create my promotional materials earlier. I didn't need sentimental appeals or flowery wording, my declaration was direct. I just said that next month, after years of developing my online business, I will establish my first physical location. Groups gathered around me in a matter of minutes as people inquired about the store's location, the goods I would be carrying, and the exclusive deals I would be providing to friends and relatives. My aunt was now showing everyone photos of my products on her phone after she had just completed speaking about Emma's academic accomplishments. There was a noticeable difference between my parents' private and public responses. As family members congratulated me, they forced smiles and nodded in agreement, maintaining their typical flawless demeanor in front of the guests throughout the evening. However, I could sense the stress in their body language, my dad's jaw tightening whenever someone brought up my store, and my mom's hands trembling a little while she served cake. Emma disappeared from her own graduation celebration shortly after her champagne toast failed, and hardly anyone listened to her rehearsed speech about her time in college. My mom's facade eventually broke when the last relative left and the caterers started to clear up. The mom, who had taught me to share the spotlight for years, confronted me and accused me of spoiling her daughter's graduation celebration. Calmly, I stated my stance, stating that I had just announced my business as scheduled and that this joint celebration was their idea, not mine. My father's response demonstrated the extent of their partiality. He jumped right to blaming me of jealousy rather than admitting that they had been treated unfairly for years. I had seen this trend since I was a little child. Any attempt to assert my own space was viewed as selfish or envious. After 20 years of holding back, I finally said it. I detailed every celebration, birthday, and moment that had been appropriated and turned into Emma's unique time. For once, I was just expressing the facts about their behavior pattern and wasn't requesting sympathy or compassion. My parents resorted to their standard defensive tactic, making the same claims they had made all through my early years. They brought up Emma's terrible beginning, her desertion, and the fact that she didn't know her biological family, which made her need further help. These were the same excuses I'd heard at every family get-together, school function, and birthday where my needs had been neglected. However, I didn't feel bad about what they said this time. I had worked with my therapist for years to process these emotions, realizing that their actions were motivated by their desire to be viewed as saviors rather than Emma's needs. We were all unaware that Emma had come back to the location and was waiting in the doorway when we confronted her. Putting on the dramatic show that had always worked so well for her, she rushed into the room with mascara streaming down her face. She blamed me, saying that I was envious of her position in the family and had always detested her. In actuality, I had spent my early years attempting to be the ideal big brother, giving up my personal space and festivities, all the while being informed that it was never enough. Instead of being the recipient of our parents' unrelenting favoritism, she was now behaving as though she had been the target of my anger. The days after the celebration demonstrated how ingrained my parents' partiality was. They concentrated only on Emma's injured feelings, ignoring the ways in which their actions had exacerbated the problem. They contacted me over and over again, requesting not just an apology, but also that I pay for Emma's vacation so she could get over the stress. Their request was quite ridiculous. They wanted me to pay Emma thousands of dollars only because people were genuinely interested in my business success rather than Emma's graduation. They demanded that I give them my hard-earned money so they could pay for Emma's vacation after she felt overshadowed at one party. My answer to their demands was straightforward. I left. I was done playing their game after years of attempting to be understanding and accommodating. My parents appeared surprised that, unlike so many times in the past, I wouldn't give in and apologize right away. Their trump card had usually been Emma's tears, but they weren't working this time. Nothing would ever change, as evidenced by their inability to recognize the hypocrisy. Emma was furious over sharing attention at one occasion, but I had been forced to share or give up the spotlight at every celebration for 20 years. I had already attempted to discuss these matters with my family. I made several attempts to discuss my parents' partiality with them during my late teens and early 20s. I tried a variety of strategies, including polite conversations at family dinners, long emails outlining my emotions, and even suggested family therapy. The identical response was given to each attempt. Emma had a difficult start in life. This expression became their go-to justification for anything I said that hurt or irritated them. When I was 19, I sobbed as I talked about how lonely I felt at my own birthday parties during a particularly trying conversation. All my mother could do was remind me of Emma's desertion. I eventually came to terms with the fact that my parents couldn't see their own actions clearly after years of this habit. At the age of 21, I left their home and rented a modest apartment across town with the first earnings from my internet business. Our relationship has grown more surface level ever since. We occasionally visit one another at family get-togethers, send each other birthday greetings, and share significant life events, but there is no longer any genuine connection. No in-depth discussions or emotional exchanges. I've stopped expecting them to change or see things my way, but they still don't understand why I've separated myself and continue to blame me for not being more understanding of Emma's needs. Update 2. My parents surprised me with an even more absurd demand just when I thought they had had enough of the commotion surrounding the graduation party. They unexpectedly showed up at my flat prior to the big opening of my store. They sat uneasily on my couch at first, acting casual as they inquired about the store's preparations. However, they then disclosed their true motivation for coming. They wanted me to appoint Emma as the store manager. Their argument was that she shouldn't have to go through the typical job search process like everyone else because she had a college degree. They seemed to believe that I had a duty to give Emma a ready-made job because I had worked so hard to develop this company over the years. When my parents enumerated Emma's qualifications for running my store, the conversation swiftly turned bizarre. My dad claims that her primary qualifications were that she was pretty, smart, and had a general business degree, as if being physically attractive had anything to do with managing a retail establishment. I had studied customer service, inventory control, and company operations for years, but it seems that Emma's beauty outweighed all of that knowledge. My mom didn't hesitate to suggest that Emma should also cut the ribbon during the store opening when I mockingly inquired if they wanted me to do anything more for their precious daughter. What was she thinking? Emma might feel less important at the graduation celebration, but it would make up for it. They believed Emma deserved more publicity, therefore they wanted me to give a management position in my company to someone who had no retail expertise and allow her to serve as the face of my store opening. However, this was no longer about birthday celebrations or toy swapping. This was my source of income, my career accomplishment, and something I had created on my own without their assistance. They reacted to my rejection in the same way they had always done. By manipulating my emotions. The guilt trips came first, followed by charges of selfishness and threats. With the same firmness that she had used to make me share my birthdays, my mom offered them an ultimatum. Either I give Emma what she wanted, or they wouldn't come to the store opening. Emma's arrogant expression as they threatened me informed me that she expected me to comply, just as I always did. They were all startled when I instructed them not to come at all and agreed to their requirements instead. Even without my immediate family present, the store opening surpassed all of my expectations. The room was crowded with my extended family, devoted clients from my internet business, and encouraging friends. I told my family members the truth without feeling ashamed or sorry when they nervously inquired about my parents' absence. Some expressed sympathy, while others were uneasy, but I didn't care about controlling other people's emotions in relation to my family's circumstances. After opening for several months, my store is doing quite well. Expecting me to come apologizing like I had so many times before, my parents tried their customary silent treatment, but now their silence is peaceful instead of terrible. To fit their idea of the ideal family, I no longer feel the need to shrink myself.